Yeah.
What did I tell you?
Yeah.
Tell them we have to learn to help her.
Excuse me for interrupting, but we're gonna start up the brass band.
That's my God.
For return.
See? See what we need right there. See, she told me when she came here.
Like this now, they
Girl,
just
we
did.
have, you know, she told me.
She could be a little honorary.
What did she do?
Yeah, they white king, but they just be the honorary.
Yeah, yeah. But she had a business telling her that. And she did. great, yeah.
So I would help somebody.
I have some, but you can't vote.
Yes, they did.
It's similar,
It
it's
is,
similar,
it
yeah,
is.
it is, so, and why don't you take one just, and
Yeah,
then
CD,
I'll
he was
follow
with,
up with you to get you one.
David and Friends. He helps
And
with
you're
scholarships.
Sarah, yes.
For kids. Scholarship for kids. He was part of, he's part of the.
Mary, about how many would you need?
At least.
Yeah. My battery, I forgot to turn my thing off. Get the battery right there. So I don't got no.
Sharp City. I like that. Yeah, brunch. Nice to meet you. How's your morning? Well, it's kind of a shitty morning. Mad. It's fine. I've been retired for a year, so I'm not used to getting up this early. Right now, I'm usually just sitting reading the paper right now. Taking it easy.
Thank you.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Morning.
Good morning. Good morning. Welcome to the Sarah Stevenson Tuesday Morning Forum. We have,
We'll still go to the
took
bathroom.
it down. Could you put it back up? Okay, we have candidates in the March 5th North Carolina Senate District 41 primary. We have Mr. Robert Burns. We have Mr. Kendrick Cunningham. We have Ms. Lucille Puckett, and she went to the restroom.
That's
She'll be right back. And we have Caleb Theodore, okay, which he is not here yet, okay? So maybe he'll come in. Okay, and thank you so much for coming out early this morning. Thank you, we appreciate you. I am Mary Johnson. I'm the facilitator along with Ms. Laura McCletty, Carlenia Ivory Canty, Jackie Walton Edwards in the back. Raise your hand. We all know you. Winston Robinson, Steve Johnston on computer. And we have Miss Aretha Sherrill. She is our chaplain. We're going to stop now and let her give us a prayer before we begin. And Natalie, I have her name right here. Let's get right over it. I'm sorry, Natalie. Okay, Natalie is our timekeeper. So she will, if you notice, she'll have some signs that she'll hold up if your time is up. And I'll talk about the time in just a few minutes. But we'll let Miss Aretha, okay, open us up with a prayer.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Good morning. I have missed being here, and if you've ever had a broken toe, that's all I'm gonna say. It's not quite healed yet, but I'm walking, so I'm thankful to God for that. But I have been in terrible pain.
And we're so glad to have you back.
Thank you very much. I'm happy to be back. You have no idea how happy I am. Let's pray. Almighty Father, you are our refuge and strength and ever-present help in time of need. You are more than able to carry us through the challenges of life, bringing hope, healing, and wholeness to our lives. When we're anxious or afraid, help us be still and know that you're God. When our bodies are weak and weary, remind us of all we can do through Christ, who gives us strength. We fix our eyes on you, and you are God, our life, our peace and strong tower. The one who alone is mighty to save. God, remember the Holy Land War this morning. Remember the children. Help them, God, to know that they're dealing with people instead of inanimate objects. This is our prayer. It's in your Son Jesus' name we pray. Let us say together, amen.
Amen.
Okay, Do we have any first timers here today? Anyone here for the first time? Oh, well, we're gonna we're introducing you separately. Okay, could you introduce yourself?
Good morning. My name is Al Smith. I'm a minister with New Beginnings Church in Matthews, North Carolina. I was at the Gantt Center yesterday and I heard about your meeting. I actually went to church with Sarah Stevenson for many years at Prince of Peace Lutheran Church. And she was a dear friend.
Thank you. Well, our forum runs from 8:30 to, Sarah, did you want to introduce? Have you been here before?
I have.
She's been here before. Okay, but I'm gonna let you talk near the end, okay?
Perfect, thank you,
Okay.
Marion.
Okay, our forum runs from 8:30 till 9:45, and we'll break for announcements at that time. Let's see, we're going to, since this is your first time here, they're going to present. We're going to have questions from the audience, and you raise your hand if you have a question, and I'll call on you in the thank you, in the order that you raise your hand, okay? So we keep a running list, and we'll call your name when it's time for your question. Okay, our guest today, and I've already told you who they are, they're running for the North Carolina Senate District 41. We're not waiting, but Caleb Theodros is not here yet. Hopefully he's on the way. But I do have, this is kind of out of order, but I have a couple of things that I want to announce before we begin because, people come and go and I want you to make sure you have the information. We have Giovanni here from the Alma Adams campaign, and she's having her state of the district on Thursday, January the 25th. Okay, she's doing it twice, once in Cabarrus and once in Mecklenburg County, and he has some flyers. So that's something that's very, very important. Also, we have Sarah from the League of Women Voters of Charlotte-Mecklenburg, and she has some great information about voting. I'm telling you everything you need to know, okay? So she will also have that for you at the end. And so we're gonna begin. We're gonna let each one of you speak. You can give your what you say, okay? And why don't we let you maybe 2 minutes, and then we will, you got microphone, okay? Be sure and hold it up close to your mouth because we are live streaming, and we do have a live audience that's watching us on Facebook and on the website.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
All right. My name is Lucille Puckett, and I'm here this morning running as a candidate. Should we stand or is it okay for?
You can sit or stand.
Okay. I'm running for a candidate for Senate District 41. Some of you may know me. I've ran for mayor in this city about 5 times and fighting for change. And I decided to take my fight to a different level, to where change can really happen and who is in Raleigh can help us here in Charlotte. We need to send someone who is a fighter, someone that we know that's going to go to Raleigh and fight with those Republicans because we know that they are in charge. We don't have time for people here in Charlotte who is not voting here in Charlotte. Voting is very important. When we get to Raleigh, we need to make sure we are there to vote in every last one of our jobs that we voted. The world will not be destroyed by those who do evil, but by those who watch them and do nothing. If you know me, you know that I will not go to Raleigh and do nothing. We need money here in Charlotte. Our roads need to be repaired. You know, I lost my son to gun violence in 2016, and I lost another son to mental health issues, seizures, last year, July the 31st. And I'm still here fighting for you. We need to take my experience with our everyday issues and take that to Raleigh and continue to fight for those here in Charlotte.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And then we give you a minute to
Sure.
relax. We'll come back to you for your opening speech.
Oh, great. For everyone I haven't met, my name is Caleb Tedros. I know a lot of folks from my recent work with the Black Political Caucus, but I've been in the community for a while. I attended Harding High School, and that's around the time that I really sort of got involved in politics and some of the systemic problems within our community. Unfortunately, from my time at Harding to even now, some of those systemic problems sustain, whether that's affordable housing and that's economic development or their lack of. And so I ran for this seat, seeing an opportunity for us to, through state legislation, really put the voices of folks, especially on the west side, in Raleigh. And so I did that with my time as the Black Political Caucus. I did that in the private sector, and I'm hoping to take that experience and put it into Raleigh. So, thank you.
Good morning, everyone. I am Kendrick Cunningham, the former president for the Young Democrats of Mecklenburg County and the current White House stakeholder for the state of North Carolina. I graduated from Philip Berry Academy of Technology in 2014, and I got my Bachelor's of Arts in Political Science from the St. Augustine's University in 2018. While I was at St. Augustine's University, I served our institution, which is a school of about 1,000 students, in the community of Raleigh as the student representative to the Board of Trustees, so I had fiduciary responsibility over a $20 million budget. And with that $20 million budget, some of my most profound actions as student trustee was helping to acquire $2 million, over $2 million of scholarships for our students. I also helped my peers get free public transportation to travel around Raleigh to have access to the economy. When I was a high school student in Charlotte, my family experienced source of income discrimination. And pretty much what that is when your family has Section 8, you have a certain amount of time to use that voucher, and if you don't use that voucher in that certain amount of time, you lose that voucher and your access to housing. And my family found ourselves in that situation. So I really went to college to understand how did that happen and what are some of the actions that we could take in order to prevent that from occurring in the Charlotte-Mecklenburg region. So once I graduated, I got on the ground and I started organizing with the Habitat for Humanity, where I was able to lead a stakeholder coalition of about 29 organizations. It took a long 4 years to get that policy passed, but we were able to work with the city of Charlotte to pass our first anti-source of income discrimination, which mandated all housing providers receiving city dollars to accept all sources of income for rent. And throughout this year, I've been working alongside the Biden-Harris administration, the North Carolinians Against Gun Violence, Mom Demand Actions, and many gun violence prevention stakeholders across the state to help us be a pioneer in violence prevention work to reduce the amount of community gun violence that is happening in our city. 50.9% of the homicides that happen in our district in our city occurs in the city district. So I'm running to protect our apparatus to prevent violent crime from happening.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Robert Bruns. Never ran for office. This is all new to me. But I'm not new to Charlotte. I've been here for 40 years. You may know me as the guy that ran the credit union. I was CEO of Charlotte Metro Credit Union, which is now Skyla Credit Union, for the past 40 years, and I've recently retired. So now I have time to pursue politics, which is one of my favorite things to do. Over my career, I've pursued politics in the federal level. I've been to DC every year and lobbied for credit unions. I've done it at the state level. I love politics. I know how to get things done. I think our credit union moved the needle in Charlotte. We focus on the underserved my entire career. The banks, they serve the overserved, whereas my credit union focused on those that are not as well off. It began serving city employees. That's how the credit union got its start. Those were Jim Crow days when the credit union got started and the banks would not serve the labor pools of Charlotte, the sanitation workers, the street maintenance folks. We came in and we lent to them and we made a difference. And so I really believe that Charlotte is the greatest city in the state, maybe in the whole Southeast. And I want to see it improve. It's got to get a little better than it can, but it's already pretty great. And so I just want to do whatever I can in Raleigh to make that happen. So it's nice to meet everybody.
Thank you very much. We're gonna open this up for questions. Okay? Questions?
Lucia, you reference voting.
Okay, wait a minute.
Pardon me?
Let's take this one. We have one that came in with.
Oh, okay.
And you take this.
So again, we have a streaming audience as well. We have a question from that audience. Mr. Ken Kuntz has a question for Ms. Lucia Puckett. Ms. Puckett, when you ran for mayor, did voters of your state senate district at any time give you the majority vote? And if not, what makes you believe that they will now elect you to state senate if they have never felt you should be mayor?
Because in reference to the numbers, I cannot speak for those that voted in the North Carolina 41 district because that district has been withdrawn. But I can speak to, in reference to why I feel like going for the Senate is the opportunity now. Running for mayor and running for Senate is two different animals, okay? Our mayor here has been established for many, many, many years. And that's a citywide position. You have Republicans, you have independent voters, you have Democrats that vote in that election. This is a Democratic primary, and this is for Democratic voters. And Democratic voters in my area will make that difference versus being citywide. And Democrats in my area have asked me to step up, as well as some others might say, to run for this position because they know that I will go to Raleigh and I will fight for us. I will fight for the causes that we face in our district, as well as the homicides. People can say they've been on many boards in reference to the violence, but I've seen it firsthand with my son being murdered in front of me. And I will fight harder than anyone in reference to the homicides and the violence and things like that, and the homelessness and mental health in our city.
Hi, I'm Nico, and I have a question for, well, actually, I don't know who I want to start with. But Caleb, you referenced that you ran, you was over a political organization. So, and Lucia referenced voting. Did you vote during that time that you ran those political, when you was over this?
Yeah. I mean, I did. So I was chair of the Black Political Caucus for 2 years. And you know, you've expressed this, but the year that I didn't vote, this year I had a change of address. And so, you know, when we talk about civic engagement, you know, I was registered as a Democrat at 17 when I was a student at Harding High School. And I have voted just about every year. And that was the period that I did not vote last year. In that time, in the past 3 or 4 years, I've run the entire GOTV program for the Black Political Caucus. I've written out how to target Black voters and ensuring, especially young people like me, can essentially vote. And so when we talk about voting, I believe it is important to take accountability, and that's something I did do. But I think when we talk about civic engagement, we need to expand the conversation to what has a person done in their body and work in the past 10, 15 years. So that started with high school Democrats. I was out when I was in UNC Charlotte. I was president of College Democrats by my sophomore year, getting young folks to vote during that time. And that work translated to my adult life, where I became chair of the Black Political Caucus, the largest political organization responsible for registering, I don't know how many Black voters, but right in the GOTV plan while I was head of that organization as well. So Black engagement and Black vote is extremely important. And I have an entire body of work that reflects that as well.
Okay, but you.
Let me come back to you
Oh.
for another question.
No back and forth.
Can
we
rebut, or can we?
Could anybody else respond to?
Is that question directly to
Yeah, well, all of them can ask.
I just want
Okay.
to.
So everybody responds, but we
Yeah.
do not have back and forth. We will come back to you. Once you receive an answer, that is the answer that you have. So we will, all right, Miko. But yes, everyone has an opportunity to respond.
I didn't, I voted every election, and I have voted, since I've been 18. But I wanted just to kind of respond to our Black Political Caucus chair here. If you're pushing people to get out and vote, and voting is very important, but school bonds was on the board, on the ballot last year.
We don't do this. She can't respond to him.
You
And that's what you're doing.
Yeah,
The
now,
candidates don't respond to each other.
your question was to Caleb, and you're saying that the rest can
Answer the question.
answer that, but you know what, but that question may not apply to her.
Because the question was, did you vote? I mean, it's yes or no?
Oh, yeah, you want, what is it that you want from her, her personal voting record?
I mean, if they're gonna indulge, I mean, because you're asking to be sent, so when you're looking at that, and there's a person that's gonna say that they're gonna be your voice up there, we need to know that you vote locally.
Okay,
So, yeah, that would be
okay,
the answer to the
okay,
question.
okay.
Okay.
Okay, so you wanna know, do they
Then
vote?
all of them vote.
Do they
That's
vote
the case,
locally?
however you wanna
Okay,
do it.
so you can answer that question.
Yeah, I did.
She did already, okay. Anybody else wanna?
I have voted in every single general election since I've been a registered voter.
Being 68 years old, I've voted a lot. Lifelong Democrat. I try to vote as much as possible, and so my record reflects.
Okay, thank you. Over here, right here. Laura. Oh.
I thought you said he had,
Oh, you wanna do the online question?
I thought you said that he had an online question. This is Nas.
Yeah, my name is Nas, thank you. Oh, okay, it's working. Hey, my name is Nas. We've heard a lot about, voting and things like that. Civic engagement is my bread and butter, so I have a question about that. So, civic engagement right now has been poisoned by the toxicity of polarization. So, it's great to hear policies, but I have a question for each one of you. What are you going to do in terms of trying to heal that divide among people of different political ideologies?
Thank you for that question, Nas. It is no mistake that in the state of North Carolina that we are like in a 50-50 situation. And being in that 50-50 situation, the NCGOP has used political violence to make which kind of puts us as a minority party in a very difficult situation in creating compromises to get the type of policies and funding that we need. But when looking at the divide, there are issues, especially in this Senate district, being that this Senate district follows the boundaries of the Crescent. And if you all aren't familiar with what the Crescent is, the Crescent are all the low-income communities inside of Charlotte where many of the most pressing issues that we talk about in the Democratic Party occur at. And these same issues happens in the same districts that Republicans or many of our Republican legislators in rural counties, if not worse, in some rural counties that occur in our district. So one thing I want to do in Healing the Divide is on day one, I will be meeting with, having one-on-ones with my fellow senators, no matter if they're Democrat or Republicans, to understand what their policy priorities are. And once we have those conversations, working with my legislative staff to do the chart. And my key policy priority areas are housing, public transportation, violent crime, and economic development. Specifically on housing, one of the things I want to do is work with Republicans to understand our similarities rather than consistently point out our differences, so that we can get a bipartisan housing deal figured out in our state legislature.
Yeah, healing the divide has to be a two-pronged approach. The first is essentially working with any Republicans if there is common ground, and there is. So oftentimes when you get into Raleigh, the biggest thing that you do, especially as a politician and especially as a Democrat, is just complaining about what those in the majority are doing. But there are issues that we can align with. First thing, especially around economic development, is things like the research and development tax credit. that North Carolina is one of the only states that doesn't have an R&D tax credit. And this, one of the only tax credits that you've seen studies that show that both citizens and both government can be credited with this. And so aside from that is really one of my campaign pillars, which is mental health. We've seen, especially throughout the state, if you look at CMS alone, and a lot of folks go to CMS, 17 students per day have thoughts of suicide in CMS. And so this isn't necessarily a political issue, but one that touches both left and right. You know, Republicans also have kids that go to either CMS or whatever their school districts may be. So there are issues of common ground that we can have discussions around. Second is to ensure that we are not in the minority. You know, for the past 10 years, we've just gotten used to this idea that Democrats have been in the minority, but we need to work harder to become the majority. I've seen too many times Democrats that have been in comfortable seats that aren't in the political field, ensuring that there's a higher turnout, ensuring that they're not helping other Democrats in maybe rural parts to win their election. And so a state senator is not necessarily only responsible for the district, but you have a responsibility to ensure that when you get to Raleigh, you're gonna get something done. And by doing that, you have to be in the majority. And so this is not saying that there's nothing you can do in the minority. There's a lot of specific areas like I listed that we can work with Republicans on. But a lot of it also has to be ensuring that we get the majority at some point. And then the third part that we don't necessarily talk about is constituent services. There's a lot of great programs, whether it's local or even at the state level, that folks just don't even know about. There are staying in place measures, especially for taxes. There's economic development programs. There are grants that go unused. So we have to do a better job of telling constituents about these services.
To answer your question, what will I do? If we look at the Iowa caucus yesterday, we see these people are still pushing for Donald Trump. We know that the Republicans is in control in Raleigh. So we cannot wait until we get to Raleigh to start building relationships and holding these conversations with the Republicans. That I do. We have to build relationship. We have to let them see our real life stories. Because when I talk to Republicans and show them pictures and let them see how the court process went involving the homicides and how the homicides will continue if our judicial system do not start to do something and stop the recidivism of people going to jail, getting out of jail. We're gonna see a lot of the same. So we can sit here at this table and talk all this fluff that we want to. We have to be able to sit at the table with the Republicans, the independents, the Democrats, and the people that are in control and hold real conversations with them and build relationship with them, because they are, as someone said, they are human too, and they have a human side. So when we're able to relate to them and with them, all of them is not hardcore Republicans, and we can win some in Raleigh. But we already see from years past that is not going to be an easy task. That's why I say, if we in here know what Vaseline is for when you go into the fight, I'm ready to go to Raleigh. I'm ready to fight.
That's a really good question. When I decided to run for office, people said, are you crazy? Raleigh is dominated right now by the Republicans, and I'm a Democrat, and it's gonna be like beating your head against the wall. My entire career, I worked for a board of directors that had a mixture of conservatives and progressives. And I figured out a way to work with all of them to get things done. I think I can do that. I think the big issues, I think abortion is on the ballot this year. I think casinos are on the ballot this year. I think there are really important issues, and we as Democrats, we can influence that. I'm not saying we can control it, and maybe we should be more optimistic and think that maybe if we turn out and vote, we could get the majority in North Carolina and really get progressive. So let's be optimistic.
Okay. Did everyone have a chance to respond to that? Oh, okay.
Okay, we have another online question, and then Natalie, you'll be next.
This question is from Faith Triggs. What will each of you look to accomplish by, you can explain your goals, strategies, and approaches, to increase the state housing trust fund? Goals, strategies, and approaches to increase the state's housing trust fund.
So when it comes to housing trust fund, it's a conversation over prioritizing it within the budget. I think oftentimes when we get into budget discussions, when we discuss where should money be allocated, housing falls by the wayside. And I know, especially in this district, when we have folks who have lived in the community for a while, they're oftentimes victims of gentrification. You have 64 roughly, I think it's almost 100 people moving into Charlotte every day. And so we have long lines in trying to use any of the housing trust fund dollars that are set aside. So the biggest thing we could do is obviously build coalitions within the General Assembly. Charlotte is not the only city that's facing a housing problem. You know, you have fast-growing cities within Durham, within the Triangle area. And that's places that we can work with folks in realizing that this is a problem that the state has in general. And the only way to do that, the only way to prioritize those, is to ensure that there's enough money allocated within the budget. So A, you have to build a coalition and allies with those in Raleigh to realize that we have the same problem. And if you don't take care of the community that built the city, it's not gonna last long. I think oftentimes we sell Charlotte and other communities as a place where people can move to. But it's the culture, it's the people, it's the community that we've built that is attracting a lot of folks to move here. And those people are going to be gone if we don't have structures in place that are gonna ensure that they can live, work, play, and retire in peace here. And so part of that is just having those discussions and ensuring that people realize this.
Anybody else?
Clearly, we need more low-income housing. It's really sad when a person works a full-time job and can't afford housing. It's a couple of problems with the entire structure is that, you know, people are not earning what they deserve in this society. And maybe we could address that with a minimum wage. But clearly we have a housing issue and we have a wage issue, and they are hand-in-hand problems that we need to address. So you know, if I go to Raleigh, I will do my best to try to improve housing in Charlotte. I do think it is a problem. Gentrification is happening right here in this neighborhood, big time. So it needs to be addressed, but I would like to see the average North Carolinian's wages go up. I think that's key.
When going to Raleigh in reference to the state housing trust fund, there are currently 14 states that have housing trust funds, and right now North Carolina is not one of those. We have to definitely advocate for more funds to be allocated for affordable housing, low-income housing, because we see more and more people, especially our seniors now, who cannot afford housing. We need to get to Raleigh and we need to advocate for some of those funds to be brought back here to Charlotte, as well as for, like I said, transportation and other things that when you was riding here today and you saw our roads and things like that, getting to your locations, our roads and things like that is terrible. We cannot sit and say, well, we're getting $50 million here for housing, and those housing is going to like people who can afford housing, and our people who is on Sugar Creek and under bridges, and like I said, people on fixed income cannot afford that. So we need to get to Raleigh and we need to advocate for more money to be put into a fund or whatnot for affordable low-income housing. And we can't just stop there.
Thank you for that question. I do want to reiterate that the current size of North Carolina Housing Trust Fund is $50 million. And working to increase that trust fund, the trust fund is one area that we can garner bipartisan support for. When we look at the city of Charlotte, we just also recently increased our trust fund. So that is an example we can use when having conversations with Republicans and their legislative staff on what are things we can do without having legislative battles, so it's not controversial in the news. The budget is already done through 2025. So we're kind of, done with discussing anything dealing with money until two legislative sessions from now. But when it is time to have that discussion about the budget, I will work with the governor's office. God willingly, Josh Stein is elected governor for the state of North Carolina. I'll work alongside the governor's office to make sure that increasing the housing trust fund is one of the recommendations he presents to both chambers before we discuss the budget. And once that recommendation is made before both chambers, I will work with my legislative staff to have those one-on-ones with the legislators we need so we can get the votes to have that specific line item in the budget increase. Because if I'm not mistaken, the city of Charlotte's housing trust fund is $50 million. That's the same size as our metro. So that could definitely stand to increase. And I definitely think that when Republicans understand that using the market to build our way out of the current housing crisis that we see in the state is the best way to go than rather having the government do it, they would definitely agree that that line item should be increased.
Good morning, and again, thank you all for coming. There's a problem that is so simple to solve. It's sad that it's not solved, and it affects millions and millions of elderly people. We become, and I say we because I'm one of them, we become trapped in our homes because we cannot see well at night. And if you're lucky enough to get as old as I am, you're gonna have the same problem. At least there's a 90% chance that you will. All we need is to have the lanes on the roads marked so that we can see them at night. I've discussed it at the city level and they keep kicking it up and say it's a state level. If you get elected, what will you do about giving freedom to all of us seniors that are locked in our houses at night?
I can definitely resonate with you. As someone who works, I'm a White House stakeholder. So one of the things that falls into my responsibility as a White House stakeholder is working with many municipal elected officials across the state. So I'm doing a lot of traveling throughout the state. And when I'm driving on highways at night, it's like I can barely see the lanes myself. And then when it's raining, I'm like, man, I just hope nobody comes to my lane. So one of the things I can do is I will invite you to, once I'm elected, to please send me an email. If you would like to meet for a one-on-one, I'll definitely come to where you're at. If you would like to come to my office in Raleigh, I would definitely love to do that too as well. Hear more about your issue, and I can work with my legislative staff to assign them to understand where exactly is that line item at and how we can get more funding to help illuminate our streets for our seniors.
I hear you right now. Not waiting till I get to Raleigh. Right now, we can advocate hard for you, for us, because I too, when you're wearing glasses and the roads at night, it's terrible. Not only the roads and the lane markings, but the lighting, period, is very bad throughout this city. And then you can't see these potholes and all that stuff. And that's what I'm talking about when I'm talking about these roads. So that's something that we should have been advocating for, and we should continue to advocate for that. I will go to Raleigh and I will fight hard for the lanes, for the markings and all of that, because that's a part of our public safety and we need that.
So, excuse me, so it's funny you bring up that point. Whenever we have discussions of gentrification, this is part of it. The idea of gentrification is not only a new population of people moving into an area, but it's the concerns of those living in that area don't get listened to. And so lighting up street signs, especially on state maintained road, those are the type of policies and ideas that get thrown by the wayside whenever you have things, the past 3 years, we've essentially cut the corporate tax rate in North Carolina. And people don't see that the second and third hand effect of doing that is having lower revenue for things like street light and state maintained roads. And so topics like that need to be brought up. However, I think that elected officials oftentimes are disconnected with those that have lived in the community for 30, 40, 50 years, and those that really know what's going on. And so when you bring that up, I think it's a second and third hand problem of many things, including a disconnect between folks like yourself, people in the neighborhood level, talking to elected officials, and second, people not realizing that when you continuously vote to cut corporate tax rates and have less revenue, there's less funds to go into issues like this. And so I hear you. I think that this is something that I wouldn't even say that we need to have continued discussions with, because the problem is so pretty straightforward. And I think that when this becomes something important enough, it should be set aside within the budget. And so one thing I'm fighting for is to bring back tax rates to what they were 3-4 years ago, to have enough funds for things like state maintained roads, and to make sure we're adequately taking care of things that affect people's daily lives. And so we talk about issues that are 500-600 feet above. We talk about things that are important like climate change. But people don't realize there are things that are affecting people quite literally every day. Things like having better state maintained roads that need to be higher in our priority list.
I share your concerns, and I think that North Carolina, I grew up, it was a great road state. I don't think it's a great road state anymore. I think we need to allocate, find the funds, do it, take care of our citizens better with better roads. So many things, better education, give teachers a raise. We gotta find the funds. We can't cut taxes and do that both. So we have to find a way to do that, but I totally support and would love to see us have better roads.
All right, we have now Miss Mary, but more importantly, we gotta make sure we get Miss Natalie back on the nightclub scene. So let's get somebody started on these roads. But now we have Miss Mary, then we're gonna.
Yes, where are you going at night?
All our meetings is at night. You need to be able to come to our meetings. Right.
Okay, but listen, you can pick her up, okay? Okay, this question is for all of you. Being in the North Carolina Senate, the upper chamber, tell me, well, let me say this first. The Democrats or the Democrats that are there now are already trying to work with the Republicans. Okay, they're already doing that. The things that you're saying that you're going to do, collaborate, work with, that kind of thing, they are really, really working hard to do that. So tell me, what are you going to do that's different than what they're doing? Because I know that they are. We even have Congressman over here, Majid over here, and he can tell you. He's not going to tell you now, but he can tell you how. He's in the House. But it's very hard. It's very, very hard. And if you think you have something magical that you could do, what is it?
There is no magical wand, and there is no one solution fit all. But what I take to Raleigh is, again, my experience. I don't think there's no one else on the Senate has lost a child. Is out in the streets fighting harder for gun violence. My nonprofit is Take Back Our Hoods. And hoods mean helping our own damn selves. And I'm out in the streets. I'm in the trenches. I'm out at these homicide scenes, bringing awareness, bringing attention, fighting for our parents who have lost their children. So being able to collectively get them together and also bring them to Raleigh. But one of the most important things that I take to Raleigh is my voice. Once I have a seat at the table where they push other people who come to Raleigh, they time them, give them 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 5 minutes. I'm permanently at that table, and my voice will permanently be heard. And I will permanently take your issues, which is my issues, to Raleigh and continue to fight. So that's one of the major differences. And sometimes bringing a fresh perspective to the people in Raleigh, maybe they can hear those voices a little bit louder than those that have already been there and have cause some sort of friction and negative connotation or whatever in their fight. So maybe just a new voice, a fresh perspective, and someone with those experiences that we're really talking about. Because I can take pictures of my son being shot, one time in the back, one time in the chest, and 3 times in the head. I was there, I have pictures. I can show them, not talking about something they see on the news or something like that. I have that firsthand experience. When I lost my son to seizures, and we're talking about Medicaid for all, and the insurance, and how they're not getting the benefits that we need. My son was 25 years old. I can talk those experiences. I have another son who has mental health issues. When we talk about getting the mental health medicines and things that they need, and when you call the police to come and see about them, and that loved one wind up dead, I can talk to those perspectives because I am that mother. I am that person out here in these streets. When we talk about the street lights and the roads, I travel those roads. I can't see either. So those issues I can take. You know, we have some of our elected officials who live, you know, in Valentine and other areas of the city that's not being neglected like ours are. I can go and speak for District 41.
Lucille, I like the boxing gloves, and the idea of fighting is great, but it's probably not gonna come to a fight. It's more working with people closely, getting to know them, going out to dinner with them, being friends with them. I mean, this would represent, this District 41 is the most urban district in the state. Charlotte is the greatest city in the state. The person that's representing that district needs to work with everybody, and I think they need to work with that person because this is the best district in the state. You get further working with people on a personal level than you do punching them in the face.
Going into a state senate where you're in the minority, you know, I'm not disillusioned to think I'm passing 3.5, 4 bills when I get in there. But I think the biggest indicator of what you will do is what you've already done. So within the Black Political Caucus, when we pursued mental health, and something we're already discussing now, we wanted to push something called the Mental Health First Aid, which is a training for all teachers to have. We looked at, from a first principle basis, the effects it would have on teachers, students, and we built a coalition of people that would support it. The Democrats and also members of the board for Mecklenburg Republicans. We had Atrium on board. And so this was an example of taking idea, doing the work, having the energy to where you talk to different stakeholders, people that are traditionally on different sides of the political spectrum, and getting them to align on one common thing, which at the time was mental health. And so that is the energy and focus that I will be taking into Raleigh. And so this isn't a promise that we're, you know, passing all bipartisan bills as soon as I get in there, but it's a continuation of the work that I've already done. Whether it's in the private sector, whether it's in the Black Political Caucus. I mean, you take a look at this recent bond issue right now that previously passed. And so we passed, I believe, a $2.5 billion bond with CMS. And so you had stakeholders, whether it was the Charlotte Business Alliance, you had activists that were on the floor, or all supporting this issue. And that was brought on by an organization and a leader that brought these different voices to the table and suggested that we needed different infrastructure for students. And so, you know, I'll say it again, the biggest indicator of what you will do is what you've already done. You don't need a seat at the table in order to make any kind of change. And that is essentially the pitch to folks, saying that I will do it in the state senate, what I've done as an activist and a community organizer.
Yes, thank you for that question. It is no surprise that Democrats are already working with the NCGOP. In my work in gun violence prevention this year, I was able to work alongside Senator Paul Loeb, who is a dear friend of mine and also a fraternity brother. One of the things we were able to work with Republicans on was getting more funding for community violence intervention programs, so the Governor's Crime Commission can continuously fund those programs across our state. If there's something magical that I think I can do is utilize my community organizing experience. I've been trained by Ignite and Seed. I also have training for the Democratic National Committee and Common Cause. And there's certain things that we can do as organizers And also have experience working with, many people call it the machine, but within, inside the party, we call it the party infrastructure. And inside the party infrastructure, we have polling staff, we have people who help us to understand those polls, the people who help us to understand which of those issues will draw people out to the polls based upon the demographics, and then how they net Democrats in the polls and how they net Republicans in the polls, and then we can work more intelligently with our party infrastructure as state senators and House representatives to identify those issues that will help to benefit both of us in the situation without causing abysmal turnout for either side. So that's what I think it's very important that we have a dedicated community organizer, someone like myself. I have 10 years working in politics and organizing, not as a volunteer chairperson, but as a paid worker for Democrats. And I know the people who I need to talk to in order to get the work that we need done to aid our state senate and aid our House of Representatives and getting more Democrats out to the polls, and also working for working family communities while we're in our state legislature.
All right, good morning. Thank you for your time being here. We hear this is a hot button topic from the local to the national level all the time, and that's deterring crime. What are practical ideas and strategies that you have to lower violent crimes within your district?
I'll wait.
Yeah. So with violent crime, we need to take solutions that we've seen in other industries and apply it to crime. Within the healthcare system, we've seen that the best solutions to anything healthcare related is a preventative measure. And so within crime, these aren't people that are inherently wanting to commit crime, but there's a direct correlation between areas of crime and lack of economic development, being underserved, under-resourced communities. These aren't just coincidences. And so what we need to do from a preventative measure is invest in these areas. When somebody has a job, when somebody is committed to that community, when they're giving feedback and is a member of that, it's a big deterrent for crime. A second thing is idle time. Within these areas, we see a lack of support and resources for after-school programs. We see folks just walking, I mean, you look at different parts of the city where you have things like after-school programs, where there are camps, where people are learning skills, you just happen to have a lower crime rate. And so part of it is realizing that it's a problem before it becomes a problem. So practical things we can do is more funding for after-school programs, more economic development opportunities where people are not even just given a job, but an actual chance for employment and careers and to build themselves up. That's the best way that you deter crime. It isn't militarizing the area and having 1,000 cops out there, but realizing that if you make this decision now, it's gonna have second and third order effects and deterring crime later. As corny as it sounds, we oftentimes heard that, it's a lot easier building strong boys than it is broken men. And so investing early enough, going to places like I went to Harding, I saw what students like us had to do after school and the sort of things that people got into. If we had more resources going into these communities, it would 100% lead to lower crime, and something that we need to invest in now, because it is a problem, especially in Charlotte and the district.
Anybody else?
Oh, yes. So throughout this year, I've worked alongside our gun violence prevention stakeholder community. I was a paid grassroots coordinator with Community Justice Action Fund. So a lot of this work that we just jump started this year is all brand new. And what many people have referenced the work that we're trying to decrease is called, like many people popularly refer to it as black on black crime. But what we have done this year is shift the paradigm on what we identify as that, and we call it community gun violence. So what that has allowed us to do is we have worked with the federal administration to identify what President Biden and Vice President Harris done is they identified additional grants that they added the TAG, Community Violence Intervention, Hospital-Based Violence Intervention, Office of Violence Prevention to, that allowed us to get increased funding to the states and cities that needed it the most. So what we did not have in the state of North Carolina or Mecklenburg County was an Office of Violence Prevention. So we spent this year working very tirelessly. We could not get it done legislatively because we did not have the votes. So we had the governor pass an executive order to create the first statewide Office of Violence Prevention. And then Mecklenburg County has an Office of Violence Prevention. We're the only county in the state of North Carolina that has an Office of Violence Prevention. Now, what that allows us to do, it allows us to get unprecedented funding. As you all see, Vice President Harris came to Charlotte last Thursday. I had the pleasure of meeting and talking with her at Eastway Middle School. And one of the things that came from that funding is that Charlotte Mecklenburg Schools was awarded the project at ADS grants. And what that will allow us, what that has given us the ability to do now through 2027 is hire 60 additional mental health-based school workers. But there are challenges to our work ahead, especially with people on the ballot like Mark Robinson. The Republicans have a majority on the Supreme Court. They also have a majority in our state legislature. And if they're able to win the governorship, they do not support gun violence prevention work. I do want everyone to be like, I have an understanding that Republicans do not support the gun violence prevention work that we're doing. So they have the potential to defund the Governor's Crime Commission, which provides us the funding vehicle to fund community violence intervention organizations, which is our street outreach team or career violence team in Charlotte, Alternatives to Violence. And then it also funds our hospital-based violence intervention program. And pretty much what these two programs do, the street outreach program, it helps to mitigate violence that occurs in our street. You have credible messengers who have contributed to the increase in violent crime, and they understand what they did to do that, and now they're working alongside public safety officials to help. They're not jumping in front of the bullet when the gun goes off. The point of street outreach is to not have the conflict escalate to gun violence. So that's the importance of our street outreach team. With hospital-based violence interventions, if all that doesn't work, once that victim reaches the hospital atrium will provide wraparound services to that individual so that they are not going to be a participant in violent crime again. So it's very important that we protect that vehicle. Our statewide Office of Violence Prevention, and we're using the watchdog organizations that we have already built to call out harmful policies, because the Republicans are going to pass, they want to pass a concealed carry permit repeal in 2024.
My chairman of the board at the credit union was Major Bruce Bellamy in the police department. And we chatted about, what's going on with violent crime. And he said most of it is gang related. And I think gangs are primarily motivated by drugs and the sale of drugs. And they fight over turf. And so the Charlotte Police Department is pretty focused on busting up these gangs. I think we need to take a look at a high level of how you do that. If it's drugs that they're fighting over, which is basically money, that drugs bring, perhaps legalization of marijuana could be looked at. If you take away that, you've reduced the amount of money they're fighting over. I don't know that that would work, but we do need, we need to address the gang violence somehow. And I know that it is a big concern, and it's a problem in Charlotte. Gangs need to be addressed if we're going to reduce violence.
When we look at reducing violence, we just can't look at the guns, the violence. We need to get people back into our educational system. When we go to our schools now, parents are not even allowed back in schools. Organizations are not even allowed in the schools. It's housing issues. People are out here fighting for housing, they're homeless. When you don't have hope for yourself, how can you have hope for anybody else? Employment. We need to bring minimum wage up for folks, because if people see that they can get out here and sell drugs to be able to survive, and they can make more money selling drugs or doing things like that than they can going to work, what options do you see? It's by any means necessary, and that's not making excuses. We don't have recreation for our children. An idle mind is a devil's workshop. And that's what we're seeing a lot of. When you take prayer, when you take God out of everything, what do you have? We grew up with that foundation. We know. We respect our elders. We respect the law. I was at a football game yesterday, and parents, children, everybody's fighting. Police trying to break them up, they fighting the police. They have no respect for anybody. We have to bring that back. We need men mentors. We need mentors, men and women. When you go out here and you see on the front line, all you see is women. Where are our men? You know, you want to stand up when it's time to get in a position, but where are you ordinarily on the front line? We need to invest back into our community. We need to invest back into our young people. You know, if you want to call things a gang, we are a gang sitting up in here right now. But is all gangs bad? No. When we see the Caucasians on the street with all their cars and things and talking and music, the police ride by. But we can't congregate like that. It's a gang, it's a problem. We have to meet people where they are, and that's what we're not doing. We gotta stop pointing fingers.
Okay, as you can see, time is of the essence here. I have a long list of names. What I'm gonna ask for is 30 seconds for the question, and if you all can take no more than 1 minute to answer the question, okay?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, and if you have a question for one person, that's also permissible. That'll help the time go also. Okay, so we have, Reverend is right here. And after him is Michelle. Huh?
Gary.
Hello,
Gary,
Pam.
I'm sorry.
I want to thank all of you for coming out and sharing your hearts with us. My question is, if elected, what will you do to help people suffering with mental health issues and their families? And are you familiar with NAMI, that is the National Alliance on Mental Illness?
We have to work closely with those types of organizations. We have a young lady here in Charlotte that fights hard for mental health. Her name is Fonda Bryant. She puts signs up in the parking decks, like at the hospital and places like that, where they know that known people to go and commit suicide and things like that. Like I said, I have a mental health child who goes out here on an executive drive, a Monarch, to receive his medication and things like that. We need more services available for them. You know, some don't want to take medication, so we gotta find other kind of solutions and things like that to service our mental health. If you don't have Medicaid, you don't have insurance, your mental health needs is going without any kind of fix or anything like that. So I will work hard with our other legislators and people to enforce the mental health, because I see it rapidly in our community and inside my household.
Yeah, I'm glad mental health is, finally getting the attention that it deserves. I started a startup that was in the mental health space, providing cheaper access to therapy. And so this has been a main pillar within my campaign, in realizing that mental health is oftentimes the main issue with a lot of these complex problems that we deal with, whether it's substance abuse, whether it's homelessness, or it's just that kid in class who can't seem to focus because of what's going on at home. A lot of these things do derive, especially also the lack of resources within those mental health services. The average cost of even a therapist, especially within North Carolina, is about $120 to $130. I don't know which kids, especially on the west side, have access to those funds in order to get the help they need, and even adults. And so we oftentimes, and the majority of kids, especially within CMS, only have access to Medicare, and that only pays for about $50 per therapy session, which puts them completely out of scope. And so whether it's teachers being trained more or students given more resources, we need to do a lot more when it comes to mental health.
Yes, I'll start with someone who has a chronic illness. I utilize, our public mental health services for free. in our county. And one thing I think that we're not doing well enough is communicating that that service is here and it's available for people to take advantage of. So I would definitely like to understand work with the office staff to understand what type of funding do they need in order to increase awareness about the program. And also, personally myself, I feel that the funding line item, which is about $2.5 million, needs to be expanded so that access to that program is widely available for all people. In addition, with working with the organization, I love listening to stories. I think people's firsthand experience is one of the things that helps to really fuel me in the work that I do in advocating for others as to why I believe that line item should be increased. So I love to use those stories to find ways to increase funding, allocate funding, or provide new streams of funding for your legislative priorities.
I do believe mental health is a problem, and from what I understand, Kamala Harris, Vice President, announced here in Charlotte that there are more funds on the way, which is good. The state expanded Medicaid last year. So funding should be getting here soon, and hopefully it'll be well used because it is an issue and it needs to be addressed. Good question.
This question is for Mr. Cunningham and Theodros. Hopefully you're familiar with the Leandro case that's been going on for decades. The judgment most recently is that the state legislature has violated the constitutional guarantee in North Carolina of quality education by underfunding schools. The legislature has refused to comply and is appealing the decision. We all know we are 50th in economic mobility here in Charlotte, and education is a huge component of being able to move up the economic ladder. So what will you do to make sure that we get schools adequately funded and the constitutional guarantee is fulfilled?
So, unfortunately, after there are some, Democrats that didn't get elected to the bench, the biggest weapon that we have for education has to be from the General Assembly, because we can't rely on judges anymore, right now anyways. And so, like you said, education is the equalizer. It's the thing that I moved to Charlotte for. In 2005, my family moved here. But right now, when you look at even teacher pay, we're about 45 out of all states in teacher pay. And so what we need to do, obviously fully funding education is a top priority, because at the end of the day, no matter what your economic development circumstance is, if that knowledge enters a kid, then he has a higher probability of getting out whatever circumstance he's in. But part of that also has to be supporting teachers. You need to attract that sort of talent in order to feed into the minds of the next generation and not just treating them as just whatever state employees that are here to just babysit. And so when you look at educational funding, it has to be at the top of mind. It has not been something that Republicans have been too happy to take care of, but we need more Democrats in there that'll push for that.
I do believe that is a very challenging situation, especially with how the General Assembly is relentlessly pursuing school vouchers. So I would like to pull on my experience. I attended Bishop Spark Community Academy Middle School, which is now closed, but it was the lowest performing middle school in the state. And we had the privilege of having Ms. Denise Watts, who is now the superintendent of Houston Public Schools, to help us with that turnaround effort. So there's many things I think that as a state senator, I would love to go above and beyond my job duties to work with Title I schools inside of my district. Most of the Title I schools that are in Charlotte, Mecklenburg schools are inside of my school district. So in doing that, one of the things that we had growing up in the Title I schools was we had a village from corporate sponsors and community volunteers, and that's something that's missing inside of our schools. So I would like to work with community partners, school administrators, in the external community to bring the village back to our schools. But on the particular question of increasing public school funding, Aside from the school voucher program, which we know is politically, I would like to identify the line items, work with Title I schools to understand what it is that they really need, go back to the board, realign those line items, and then doing what needs to be done outside of that with the one-on-ones in order to have those line items funded.
Okay, those are just those two. Shay.
Hey, thanks for everyone for coming. My sort of a two-part question, but I want to know what happens, or what your idea of what happens when Republicans won't come to the table. We all know that their platform is one of obstinates. They're not interested in crescent-based problems, and I don't know how we intend to push them towards that. But I think recognizing that these problems are okay with Republicans and intentional by them is pretty huge when you're talking about having someone understand or bringing someone to the table. Can you provide some examples of where Republicans, or where a Republican or Republicans have crossed the line to support the Black community, AKA the Crescent, and issues specific to areas like that?
It's ran out of battery. I'm sorry. Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to be a defender of Republicans here, and so I very much agree with you. Oftentimes, the laws and regulations that are passed by Republicans have not been a bonus or a plus for African Americans. And so, but what we can do is find specific areas where we can find common ground, such as mental health. So I hate to bring it back to mental health again, but African Americans are abnormally affected with mental health, especially because of lack of services. We have seen a willing from Republicans to work on this issue, maybe not for the same reasons that I would work on mental health, but there is a willingness to. And so, but that's what we have to do. There are hot button issues that get national attention that folks just aren't gonna work on. But these sort of problems like mental health, and especially even attracting industries to Charlotte. And so when you talk about economic development, what industries are you bringing to Charlotte? And we've seen a willingness for Republicans to work on this issue, but if we can align on the specific types of jobs that align with people, especially that live on the west side, we can get some things done. And so, yeah, I mean, I'm not, there aren't too many examples to really find where Republicans have been willing to help, but that's why the onus is on us to really work with folks and identify those 2 or 3 Republicans that can try to at least champion what we're working on.
I can recall 2 incidents where Republicans have worked with people in Charlotte. I don't know if you remember a senator not too long ago. His name is Joe Ford. Joe Ford is a Democrat, and he worked across party lines with the Republicans to be on the west side, right over off West Boulevard, to get sidewalks and things like that, where some young children had got hit by a truck. But because of his advocacy to work across the party lines, his next election, he did not win, because people feel like once you try to work with Republicans, you then is a Republican. But how do you work and try to build bridges if you can't, come to some sort of compromise or something to, get to give to get? And then there was a situation not too long ago. I was in Mayor Loud's office about 2 weeks ago, and we was kind of talking about some things that was happening around here in our city. And we had a conversation about Republicans, and she talked about how one Republican brought millions of dollars to the airport. Y'all cut it out for it. That's how our airport is being renovated and reconstructed right now, and that's because that's at the hands of a Republican. So those are 2 situations.
Yes, one example I can point to is in my specific work is we were able to garner Republican support for the Bipartisan Safer Communities Act. How that translated down to North Carolina is that there are Republicans who are willing to support our investment into community violence intervention. And we do also have a senator, our U.S. Senator Tom Tillis, who is adamantly working alongside us in that fight too as well. So there's definitely relationships we can pull on, expand upon, and use to our benefit in helping bring more Republicans to the table. But I think the larger problem at hand is that we have a turnout and gerrymandering issue, specifically for Democrats. Republicans are using gerrymandering, and not to say that we don't either as well, but they're egregiously using gerrymandering to protect their power. And when we look at turnout in Mecklenburg, we are the powerhouse of North Carolina. For the last 3 cycles, we've been 98 out of 100, and Black turnout has been decreasingly lowering in our county. It is very important that we have someone like myself who's not afraid to be on the block, who's not afraid to go to the voters and inspire them and teach them about the exact work that we're doing, so that we're registering new first-time voters and getting the correct people to the polls to increase our turnout so that we can beat a gerrymandered map.
We need to work with Republicans. There's no way to get anything done without working with them. We need to quit this divide. Listen, I dislike Trump. I hate what he's about. I'm sad to see this happen again. We need to find a way to work together because we all want what's best for our community. And the only way to get there is to work together.
Good morning, Dr. Blanche Penn here. I just want to know very quickly, I fight affordable housing with a lot of different organizations, from Action NC, Voice for the People, and so on. Now, I want to know a very short sentence from you, and we've been fighting Raleigh, Washington, and all that. Quick sentence from you, how do you plan on making those changes in order to help people deal with affordable housing? How do you plan on doing that? What are you gonna do?
We can only keep lifting up those issues and having strong advocates like yourself, Ms. Penn, coming before the legislators, letting them hear true stories, continue to bring people to Raleigh and letting your voices be heard. No matter how it seems like our fight is not gaining any grounds or stuff, people are listening, people hear, and eventually that change is gonna come. And that's all we can do right now is keep fighting, keep advocating for those dollars to bring back here to Charlotte for not just affordable housing, but low-income housing. Because, when we talk about affordable housing, it's affordable to who? What a lawyer can afford, what a doctor can afford, what a police officer can afford. But what about those that's making minimum wage? We just have to stay in the fight, and we can't give up. And I will take that voice, my voice, to Raleigh to be heard.
So Dr. Penn, one thing that we haven't necessarily discussed with affordable housing that we could do, especially in Raleigh, is around corporate housing. We've seen that now housing has become an asset class that banks and different private equity firms have used in order to have a stream of income. I think Goldman Sachs alone has about 1,000 houses that they own in Charlotte alone. And so what does that do to the price of housing? It artificially increases it. So when you're out trying to buy a home and you're a first-time home buyer and you're trying to build a family and have roots even on the west side, you're not only competing with other family, but you're competing with $1 billion hedge fund for that house. And so this has artificially increased all of the housing, especially within Charlotte, and has created a scenario where oftentimes, especially if you're looking to buy your first home, you're not able to compete. There's no way your one income competes with $1 billion private equity firm. What Raleigh can do, especially within the state senate, is have more restraints over the number of houses corporations can buy. We understand that it is often used as an asset class, but when you have everyday, especially Charlotteans and North Carolinians looking to buy a home, it is unfair to be competing with entire corporations.
Everybody did, okay.
Yes. So fighting for inclusionary zoning, so at will, instead of a statewide mandate, that I think cities should be able to implement inclusionary zoning at will if they want to. And what that will be able to do is it means no matter the zip code, housing can be built at will. So it doesn't matter what's there. If you have, if it's zoned for that particular type of housing, it can be built there. I'll also like to advocate for eviction expungement. There's a huge barrier for many working family communities who have evictions on their record, and we're a state that do not allow evictions to be expunged. If evictions are allowed to be expunged in the state of North Carolina, that would remove a huge regulatory barrier for working family communities to access housing. I would also like to work to increase the senior affordable housing line item, which is $25 million, and workforce housing support, which is $50 million. And I will also advocate that People do not sell homes to corporate landlords because there are elected officials and candidates running for office right now who have done that.
All right, I have a question, then we're gonna have Miko, and then we're gonna go to announcements and close it out with a presentation by Dr. Thomas. My question is, so North Carolina state politics have a feeling or a sentiment that seems to respond to the conditions that Republicans set. However, if you look at the demographics of largely eastern North Carolina, and even western North Carolina, how deeply underserved communities are in each of these regions, the demographic seems to point towards what traditionally would be a Democratic voter. My question is, how do you, or what plans could you utilize to galvanize populations to turn the state essentially?
Yeah. The biggest thing is providing a message for people that they can align with. I think oftentimes within the Democratic Party, we've had this habit of giving people reasons to not vote for the other team. Trump is evil, or the Republicans in Raleigh are evil, but we haven't expressed an actual message that people can run towards. So the biggest thing we can do is clearly outlining our values and what I would fight for, especially in Raleigh. We've seen that especially within Mecklenburg County. If rates of African American voters are aligned with white voters, that the entire state would be a solid blue state. And in order to do that, you need a product. I mean, whenever you're in business, you can't get mad that people don't buy your services. And it's the same thing with running for office. We need somebody who has a message, one of economic development, of affordable housing, somebody who's going to be pushing for education, and somebody who aligns with the voters, especially within that district. And it's that message that's going to get people out, that people haven't traditionally voted, whether it's young voters, African American voters, and not only are they going to turn the county and the district around, but this can align and increase the entire state as well. So definitely, one thing Democrats have to do is articulate a message that people can run towards and not away from.
I'm gonna guess that we're all Democrats here. And if you look at the demographics in this state, there are more Democrats. So why are we losing? We gotta turn out. We gotta turn out and vote. We gotta galvanize the issue. We gotta get out and vote. And that's the bottom line. We can outvote the Republicans if we show up.
Yeah, so that's a very challenging situation as someone who works at the top of the ladder when it comes to our party infrastructure in our state. I don't like to tend to talk about things that are outside of my control, but in this particular Senate district, and mobilizing people to the polls, yes, we do definitely need the message. Well, one of the things we're not doing well enough is we're not coordinating with our precinct chairs well enough. Political organizations aren't deploying their resources. There's currently a debate in the School of Thought on how do you deploy political resources. Do you spend it more on safe districts or do you spend it more on competitive districts? And right now the School of Thought is that you spend the most amount of resources on competitive districts to get the votes that you need in the legislature so we can win our public policy battles. But one of the things we're seeing, especially here in Mecklenburg County, is when you don't invest in the areas that are safe, those people do not turn out. So I think having the relationships built with our organizers, our party leaders, and our party infrastructure executive leadership, I know I can win the argument on why we need to be investing in safe democratic districts in order to increase the turnout. I think that one particular thing right there is what will help us to increase turnout specifically in this Senate district.
All right, Miko.
Nope.
Oh, sorry.
We have to restore hope and restore faith back into the voting system, because when we see, we have to let our people know that their vote do count and their vote do matter. Because when they go and vote for someone and someone make them all these promises on the campaign trail, but then once they're elected into office, they do a 360 about face. They're not going to continue to go out here and vote. But we do have two other candidates on this forum, and if we talk about your voting, you've been a voter since 1984, and you only voted 31 times. What will encourage you and motivate you to continue to come out and vote?
All right, thank you. Quickly, Miko, and then we're gonna have announcements.
Okay, I think my question is specifically to Caleb as a reference to the seat. I really appreciate a lot of the work that you say that the BPC has done, and that's a great organization. I think everybody need to do some research and go join it. But my specific question is, what are you planning on doing? Because the only thing I've been hearing you say here today is pretty much what the BPC has done, but not what Caleb as the individual has done. And just looking at the voting record, not voting at 2012, 13, 14, 15, 17, 22, and 23, you can explain that. But the question I want to know, what specifically is it you going to do for the community, not what the VPC has done to educate and inform. We're talking about you.
All right, thank you.
Yes, ma'am. I think I've done a little bit more than the BPC, but Miko, and I would tell you to double check those years, because I voted in those years. It's public record. I know you've audited, mine a little bit more than anybody else's, but throughout the community, and we worked together when we were on the west side, when I worked for Councilmember Mayfield, and for 2-3 years, we attended every neighborhood meeting, everywhere from Camp Green to Steel Creek to Clinton Park. Going to those areas and talking to individuals about the plights that they had for 2 or 3 years. When I was making the trek when I was a UNC Charlotte student, getting to the west side in order to learn about the community on the west side, even though I didn't even live there, up to the point where I graduated, bought my first home off of Tuckasegee, engaged with the neighborhood leaders there, and continued to work throughout many organizations. I bring up the Black Political Caucus because I was elected chair at 27 in an organization that has 40 plus people. When I was elected chair, there was 170 people. I left chair when there was 320 people. And so, yes, I bring that up, part of the resume, not the complete resume, but it's a continuation of things that I have continued to do. I could also talk about the Charlotte Equitable Development Commission. The mayor appointed me chair about 2 years ago to work on specific strategies that the city can do for the next 20 and 30 years, ensuring that we're gonna have equitable growth and not just inviting everybody from the country to move here. And so that is a small snippet. We can continue to talk more, but I'd love to expand on some of my experiences. So thank you for the question.
All right, thank you so much. Please give our guest a round of applause. Thank you for your presence at today's forum. We're gonna go quickly into announcements. Sarah, you wanna?
Oh, sure. Thank you.
Morning, everyone. Thanks so much for being here. And I just wanted to let everybody know that after the meeting, if you want to come by, I have voter registration forms. I have information about early voting and just some quick things. February 9th is the last day to register. That includes changing your address, so it's not just new registrations. And then during early voting, you can do same-day registration, but then once that closes on March 2nd, then you have to wait till the general, so don't wait. And then I have some literature over here. Our Vote 411 Nonpartisan Voter Guide is gonna go live on February 1st. And so check that out. And then I have some information about, very important this year is bring your photo ID. There are exceptions that they say are accepted. We want people to just bring a valid photo ID. So just trying to get the word out about that. And then we have our Civics 101 program that starts middle of next month. So I have information about that. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Any other announcements, please send to Steve. I do want to recognize our current and former state, elected officials. Please stand and just so we can acknowledge you. Thank you, Mr. Najee. Dr. Thomas Moore has a tribute that will close us out to our one and only Miss Sarah Stevenson.
The person on her left is Thomas Moore. That's me. And Mrs. Stevenson had a son, Sammy Stevenson, who was an opera singer. He was the tallest Porgy in Porgy and Bess ever. I think he's about 6'7" or so. But often she would say, Thomas, sing a song. And this morning I was thinking of this song. I want y'all to think seriously about the fact that there are a lot of people who are working behind the scenes. My area is early childhood education, so I work with the young children and young children throughout this world. In their classrooms, they were singing songs. So I want to sing for you a little bit of Go Down Moses. Go down into Egypt land and tell old Pharaoh, let my people go. When Israel was in Egypt land, let my people go. Oppressed so hard they could not stand, let my people go. Go down, Moses, way down in Egypt land. Tell old Pharaoh, let my people go. Tell old Pharaoh, let my people go.
Thank you so much. Please join us next Tuesday as we have another amazing group of presenters who you will find out next week. So join us. We are still doing candidates. For the rest of the month, I believe. District 105. Oh, that's a good one. We got a lot of District 105. Here are the names next week. Please join us. Thank you for attending Sarah Stevenson Tuesday Morning Forum.
Nice to meet you. Pleasure.